John Locke, the English philosopher, once said, paraphrasing the book of Genesis, "In the beginning all the world was America." And it's a beautiful thought. And I think what he meant by it...
Wait a minute. No, I forgot to turn on this light. It looks pretty good, though.
All right.
You know, it looks pretty good. I'm just going to...
Do you want to turn it on anyway?
John Locke, the English philosopher, once said, "In the beginning all the world was America." And it's a beautiful thought, and I think what he meant by it was that here in Europe, in England, old history, corrupt, worn, but in America something was starting brand new. Virgin land, untouched, unspoiled, and that it was an opportunity for, if not a perfect society, certainly a rebirth and uncorrupted one. We shall see. The 13 English colonies were formed for various reasons. Some for religious freedom. One, Georgia, the last one, founded as a place of refuge for convicts and ex-convicts. Very often there was a multitude of reasons. Economic was a primary one. Stock companies formed to make their fortune. Whatever the reasons were for the founding of the 13 English colonies on the Atlantic seaboard, what they all had in common was that to be officially recognized, they needed a charter from the King of England, which each in turn would get. He would give some land to favorites of his court. That's how New Jersey was formed. One of those favorites was a man named Lord Baltimore, the founding of the colony of Maryland, a kind of haven for Catholics in a predominantly Protestant England. And these 13 colonies were formed from the first, Virginia, in the early 1600s, to the last, Georgia, in the early 1700s. In the founding of these colonies, a certain economic arrangement was made. It may come under the broad heading of mercantilism, which involves a very specific kind of relationship between England, the mother country, and the colonies. The colonies exist to serve the mother country. And the arrangement was to work something like the following. The colonies would provide various raw materials that would be brought back on English ships, and that was important, not colonial ships, but English ships, back to England, to be turned into finished goods and then sold in England and back to the colonies. One could argue, why not just manufacture these raw materials here in the colonies? That would not benefit the merchants, the English merchants, would not benefit the mother country, which is why the colonies were founded and given charters. This was codified eventually into a series of acts by Parliament, the lawmaking body of England, called the Navigation Acts in the 1660s, which laid out very clearly what the responsibilities were for the colonists. But for the next 100 years or so, from the time of the 1660s to the 1760s, in that 100 years, you had significant periods of what we might call neglect. Neglect by the mother country of the colonies. Periods of this, interspersed with periods of greater attention paid. Why this relative ignoring of the colonies over such a long period of time? Number of reasons. First of all, although it might hurt our ego to say it somewhat, the colonies were not that important as far as England was concerned. They had much more pressing things on their minds. Internal problems. England would undergo a violent revolution in the 1640s, which ended up in the beheading of a king. Various wars with European powers, particularly France. Much more important things than what was happening 3,000 miles away. And that distance itself was a factor in the neglect of the colonies.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?